Um, good morning. So we've had data collection, treating of cancer, antimatter creation, and now we've got colouring in. I think we've got everything covered there. I do get quite nervous speaking to large groups of people, I will say. So I would really appreciate it if you could all imagine me naked. What I've got here, first of all, I'm going to start with something I think is going to revolutionise electronic presentation. Please don't be alarmed by what you're going to see here. This utilises bleeding-edge technology, okay? Don't be afraid of what you see here. I call it PowerPoint. Also, I should also point out as well, I'm actually 47. I'm quite a bit older than 33, but this shows you how lo-fi this presentation is. I don't know how to get back into PowerPoint and change that 33 to 47. Don't know or can't be bothered. I can't quite decide. But this is my life in crayon, okay? From a very early age, I was always drawing. I was always doodling. There was always a crayon in each hand. I should also point out that's supposed to be a safety pin. Probably does cast a very dark shadow over my abilities as an illustrator, but you've got to bear with me, okay? Try and use your imagination. That's what this is about. Creativity. Okay, so I'm always drawing, I'm always doodling. Occasionally those crayons would get into places where a crayon really shouldn't go, usually resulting in a trip to the hospital for me and a very awkward moment in A&E. That was one such case. The other place was a very dark day that we're not going to go back to, okay? But the crayons are there. They're constant. I'm always drawing. I'm always doodling. In short pants, okay? The Manchester ears, the floppy hair, the baggy jeans, okay? Still the crayons are there. They're ever present. I'm always drawing. I'm always doodling. The ill-fated metal years, rock on. Now you can see the change to the physiology. We've got the mullet is in full effect, okay? The acne's riddling the face. Still, the crayons are there. I'm always drawing, I'm always doodling. By the time I got to sixth form, I discovered the joys of mucky beer. Now you'll see a slight change to my anatomy now, okay? I'm all out of spec. My ratio's gone from, 4:3 into widescreen. But I was always drawing. I was always doodling, okay? Also at sixth form, there was my burgeoning reputation as being a bit of a lover man, at least in my own mind anyway. But still, the crayons were there, ever present. I was always drawing. I was always doodling. Now, I wasn't always going to be an illustrator. I thought I was going to be an archaeologist. History was my bag at school, because I was a straight-A student, okay? Sadly, drinking mucky beer plus chasing girls equals terrible exam results for Jobling, okay? That's animation, by the way. You'll see nothing better at Pixar. But yeah, I basically had to resit a year at college, okay, at sixth form. And I dropped many of the subjects I had taken, and I changed it towards an art course. I took art, and I took design as well. Because I still had those crayons to fall back upon. And gladly for me, or fortunately for me, my father supported me, okay? And it's allowed me to work with plasticine men in Bristol, Martian men in Manchester, builders of my own design, and Frankensteinian creatures of my own creation. That's My Life in Crayon by Curtis Jobling. Okay, in a little bit more detail, but very briefly. I was a straight-A student at school. In part, this was because of my older brother, Mark. Mark is a year older than me. He's a larger, broader, hairier version of me, basically. But Mark has an eidetic memory. He has a photographic memory, instant recall. Anything he's ever read or heard about in his life, it's there in his head, okay? It's like a Rolodex of information. He's like, as I say, a bigger, hairier version of Sheldon Cooper. But everything he knows is just there instantly. He can call upon it. And because of this, he's never revised for an exam in his life, okay? So his GCEs, as they were back in the day, he got all A's in those with no revision. He took biology, chemistry, physics, and astronomy as his A-levels, just for giggles, because he enjoyed astronomy as well. He got all A's in those, with no revision. Then he went off to study biochemistry at St Andrews University, which he also passed clearly and sweetly with no revision. Then he did his master's in biochemistry in Liverpool here, okay? And then he got bored of doing biochemistry. He thought, I'm going to teach myself the language of computers. This was 30 years ago, okay? And then, having taught himself the language of computers, he then got headhunted by Chase Manhattan Bank and then JP Morgan. And now he sets up help desks for the computer systems for JP Morgan all across Europe and North Africa as well. I had to follow that idiot through school. Every teacher I ever met thought, another Jobling boy, he'll be a prodigy just like his brother. No. I wasn't. I had to work really hard just to try and keep up with that quite extensive shadow, okay, just to try and follow his lead. So I did work hard, as I say, up until the point where I got to sixth form. And then the wheels kind of came off, but I wasn't sad about that because it finally allowed me to do the thing that I really wanted to do. Although I was a straight-A student, my calling had always been to work in the arts, okay? So I do feel like being here today, there is a little bit of imposter syndrome going on, okay? All the science and the maths has kind of been covered here. I bring in something else here. STEAM is what we're talking about. It's science, technology, engineering, art, and maths as well. The art is the bit that I bring here. Because I am a firm believer that creativity can be used in all sorts of areas of industry as well. And it's creativity that I talk about in schools all over the world. As I say, it wasn't a career path for me when I was your age. Okay, I'm speaking to the students rather than the older people in the room. But when I was your age, when I had my careers advisor, the careers advice I got, because I was a straight-A student, it was quite unusual, actually. I went to see the careers advisor. He sat me down. He said, "Okay, Curtis, tell me what it is that you're interested in." I was like, "Oh, nobody's ever asked me this before." I thought, well, I said, I love writing. I love reading, okay, fiction. And what else? I love art as well. And they're my favourite sort of subjects. He said, "Very good. ICI." And instantly there and then he said that I should be going to work at ICI. That was the future for me. And I said, "Hang about, you just asked me what it is that I'm interested in." And he said, "Yeah," he said, "but they're not jobs. That's not a career. You can't go off and work in art and cartoons and tell stories. That's not a job." I said, "A career." He said, "A career for you is clearly in the sciences. That's what your strength is." And I was good at it, but it wasn't what my calling was. It wasn't what I wanted to do. And when I was a kid, when we had visitors come into our schools, and I'm talking this is quite a while ago, 30-odd years ago, the visitors who came into our school to kind of recruit and inspire an audience, it was ICI, it was petrochemical companies from the Northwest. It was the army, it was the police force, okay? We didn't have poets, artists, writers, musicians, performers, none of those things turned up at school. If they had done, it would have probably blown my tiny mind, okay? So I was convinced that a career in creative industries was where I was going to be heading as well. And I visit schools all over, hopefully encouraging children to embrace creativity and aspire to do things using creativity as well. And I do firmly believe that creativity can be used in all sorts of disciplines as well. Everything I do in my career, and you probably picked up on this already, is born out of the hobbies I had when I was a child, okay? And that's the message that I take into schools all over. It's to tell children to keep their hobbies, okay? Because you never know how that's going to help you, okay? Reading for pleasure, that's a huge deal. The more you read, the better you'll be at writing. The two things go hand in hand, okay? That's a no-brainer. But it will help you in comprehension, it will help you with your vocabulary, it will help you with your creative writing as well. But most importantly, reading a good book is pure escapism. Everybody needs that in their lives from time to time. Perhaps you enjoy getting on a stage, song, dance, musical instruments, jazz hands. Keep your hobby. Maybe you enjoy sport. I'll throw that in the mix as well, okay? Sport, arts and culture, they're the same strange spokes in the same weird wheel. Tennis, cricket, football, rugby, hockey, netball, keep your hobby. Maybe you enjoy painting, sculpture, model making, illustration. Some of you boys may be into fashion. I'm not here to judge. Keep your hobby. At the very least, you have a worthwhile pastime for the rest of your life, and at the most, you can make a living doing the thing that you love, okay? Not everybody gets to do that in life. I know I'm very fortunate indeed. But that message about keeping your hobby and keeping your interests, it can only help you as well. Being at school and in education, it's not enough to just cram your head with facts, okay? We need something else in there as well, and that's where the arts are so important, because creativity feeds the soul, okay? It's what separates you from the robots and the automatons out there. Even the most academic person does need something creative in there as well. That's something missing, all right? And my message isn't about replacing the academic with the creative. It's about balance. It's about whole development, okay? It's about your spiritual side. And I'm not a spiritual person, but I mean your emotional well-being alongside your academic and sort of career pursuits as well. I'll tell a little story about my dad. You've probably got a picture of him, gruff Yorkshireman. He was the head of personnel for a very, very large corporation in the UK, one of the biggest ones. And he was in charge of it all the way across the north of England and into Scotland. And his job was to recruit graduates for this particular company. So he used to, over the course of the last 20 years of his career for this organisation, he had to interview graduates from all over the country. And many graduates coming through from all sorts of degrees. It got harder and harder for him to recruit people because the students that he was seeing became more and more clones of each other, okay? They were carbon copies of one another because they were all getting the same GCSEs, they all got the same A-levels, they were getting the same grades, and then they were going off and doing similar degrees and coming out with the same sort of levels of passes as well. It got harder and harder to differentiate where the quality was and who the people were that were going to be the leaders that he wanted in the company that he worked in, okay? And that's when he started to look a little bit deeper into who those people were, what made them tick, what their interests were, and it was the people who were creative were the ones who were going to get ahead because they had something more to offer, they had more strings to their bows. And it could be, a violin bow or something. It could be a kid who's played a violin since he was 10 years old. It could be a kid who's been captain of the local rugby team. It could be a child who performs, okay, or a singer, or somebody who writes, or a poet. Any of those different things. Something creative, if you've got that as an edge, okay, on your CV down the line, that will help you, trust me, because it will make you a little bit more interesting. And from experience, I think it's fair to say, creative thinkers can step ahead in certain ways that the more logical thinkers might not. Logical, creative, they're two different hemispheres of the brain. But the right-hand side of the brain, the creative side, that might just help you. Having a little bit of an edge there might help you, even if you are pursuing the sciences. Having a creative thought and inclination might help you as well. Okay, so you've probably seen, put your hands up if you've seen Men in Black, the film Men in Black. It's a terrible film in my opinion, but there is a moment in that film which I think is fantastic. And it's the bit where Will Smith's character gets recruited by the agency, okay? And there's 4 of them in the room. I think there's somebody from the Air Force, there's police, the Air Force, Marines, and Army, okay? And they're all in the room, sat there, and there's Will Smith from the local police force. And they're all recruiting. And they're sitting in these egg-like chairs, and they're given a piece of paper and a pen, and they have to fill in a form. And in the middle of the room, out of reach, there is a table, okay? And they're all sat there, punching their pens through the table, making a right mess of it, because they're told to fill it in, and they're sat in their chairs. Will Smith's character just gets up, he walks across the room, and he grabs the table, and he drags it across the room. It makes a horrible screeching sound, like fingernails down a blackboard. He drags it all the way back towards him, apologizing as he does so, and everybody's kind of wincing, but then he's able to write and fill in the form, whilst the other 3 gormless characters sit there thinking, I wish I'd thought of that, because he thinks creatively, and that sets him apart from the pack. And if you think creatively, that will help you as well. If you are faced with a problem and the only way that you know how to do something is to repeat that thing again and again without changing course, you are doomed to make the same mistake again and again and again. If you are creatively minded, you'll think, do you know what? I'm not going to be a robot. I'm not going to try and smash through that wall to get through it. I'm going to go out the room, I'll leave the building, I'll climb in through a window at the back, down a few stairs, back upstairs, and I'll come in the back way. It might take a little bit longer, but you will get there smoothly and seamlessly as well. And that, in my opinion, is where that creative thinking can really help you as well. Communication. I was speaking to Carsten, Professor Welsh here. That was why he asked me here to talk about how creativity and communication are the things that are going to help you. I did a HND in communication. I never got HND, have no degree. I never did a degree. I went to art college, and off the back of that, it allowed me then to work in the creative industries. And I had a path that I took into my career was one where it was rungs of a ladder. I knew after I'd done my HND, after resitting a year at A-levels, that I could have gone to the Central School of St. Martin's and done a degree in illustration or animation. But when I came out, I was always going to have to start on the bottom rung of the ladder. I wasn't going to go straight in as the director of a company. I needed to start at the bottom, so I needed a genuine sort of idea for where I could start. And that's why I started communicating. In my final year of my HND, I would send letters, bits of paper that you write on, you fold them up, you stick them, before email, okay, sent letters out to production companies. One of the ones I wrote to, you probably saw from the beginning there, was Aardman in Bristol. And I got work experience on Wallace and Gromit. That was my first job outside of college, okay? Off the back of that, I got to work on a Tim Burton movie, Mars Attacks. It was made in Manchester. I was a puppet painter on that film. But then I was setting myself career targets, but I was meeting people, I was talking about the work that I did, I was making opportunities. Dialogue leads to opportunities. You need to be able to speak to people. You need to be creative, sell yourself, okay, talk to people. And that communication, the dialogues that open up, they can lead anywhere. You don't know until you start speaking to people. In my own industry, working in film and TV and animation, I have scientists who collaborate with us, okay? You wouldn't expect it, but we do. For example, when we make an animated film at Pixar or DreamWorks or Blue Sky, any of those studios, we're hiring paleontologists, we're hiring anthropologists, people who can tell us how bone structure works, or muscle structure, how a character should move if we anthropomorphize something. That's all brought on board, okay? Bear in mind, these conversations, can happen. It was interesting that in Maria's talk earlier on, she showed that footage from Boston Dynamics of the robot hopping along and doing all that kind of stuff. Recently, you may have seen a viral video that's produced by, it's done in the style of Boston Dynamics, but it's by Collider Media, okay, over in California, who've produced this fantastic spoof of Boston Dynamics. Has anybody seen that? Put your hands up if you've seen the video. It is tremendous. It starts off in very much the same way, where you've got the scientists are walking alongside like the robot and they're kicking it kind of thing to make it knock over, and it's learning and correcting itself. but very quickly it spirals out of control. They start hitting it with hockey sticks, smashing bottles over its head, spraying mace in its eyes, shooting it at point-blank range. Suddenly, it grabs the gun back and it turns on them, okay? It kicks one of the guys in the down belows. It all ends it's hilarious. I can't recommend you seeing it enough. But this is when art imitates life, okay? And those guys who work at Collider Media, they already work with scientific companies developing interfaces, ways that animation, film, storytelling can be used. So if you can communicate using that ways, again, opportunities will arise there as well. But yeah, I'm a firm believer that leaders of industry are creative people. The people who run the banks aren't bankers, they're the creative, they're entrepreneurs, people who can think outside of the box. As I say, I'm very lucky I get to visit schools all over the world talking about my work as a storyteller, as a writer, and as an illustrator. And that message I take takes to children from all ages, from Key Stage 1 right up to graduate level as well. It's that message to keep their hobbies as long as you can. Don't be distracted, don't drop it by the wayside, take it as far as you can. You never know where it's going to lead you, okay? I'm never going to persuade every child to pick up a book, but if I can persuade a few of them, great, job done. And the schools I visit are all over the world. It's India, it's Russia, it's across the Americas, it's Europe. I'm very fortunate that that's where it takes me. And the collaboration thing, where I'm saying art and science can meet and creativity can work together. Recently, just last week actually, I've been inaugurated into the Royal Literary Fund, which has been around for about 300 years. This organisation where it places fellows, writers, in residence with universities. For the next 2 years, I'm going to be working with the University of Manchester's School of Biological Sciences, advising medical degree students how to write their theses and essays, because for the most part, they don't have the skill set for doing that, because many of those students are purely academic. They don't know how to construct an argument and then construct an essay on that. Genuine fish out of water territory. I don't know how that's going to go, but it's going to be very challenging and a lot of fun. So that's my kind of work. The message that I've got to tell to you today is to keep that creativity, even though science students have something, a string to the bow, that's going to give you an edge, okay? And use that skill along the way as well. It will set you apart from the pack. Very quickly, last 10 minutes here, I'm just going to give you a quick upsum of what it is that I do. As has been mentioned earlier on in the introduction from Selena, I am an author and an illustrator, okay? Quickly, put your hand up if you tell me what an author is. An author is somebody who writes books. Too easy, no prizes. What's an illustrator then? An illustrator is somebody who draws pictures, that's right. I colour in for a living. It's not a real job, is it? It is. I write and illustrate picture books, okay? But I also use the skills in animation. Animation is, anybody? You can't say, if I say animation is and you say animating things, that's a cop-out, okay? We can't have that. Animation is bringing things to life through moving pictures, okay? If you've ever made your own flip book, bottom corner of a sketchbook or a jotter, you draw a stick man, lift up the page, draw him in a slightly different pose, do it again and again, flick the pages, stick man comes to life. Put your hands up if you've done that. Crikey, we've got lots of animators in the room. Who would have thought it? That's animation. There are 3 ways we do it professionally. There's drawn animation, computer animation, puppet animation. Drawn animation is a series of drawings filmed back to back. We show one after another, the characters come to life. Okay, we're thinking of drawn cartoon shows. Put your hand up, don't shout out. Put your hand up if you can give an example of a hand-drawn cartoon animated TV show. Put your hand up, don't shout out. Yeah? Amazing World of Gumball actually has loads of things in there. I know, because I'm a complete child, I watch these cartoons. It's got loads of mediums, but it has principally got drawn animation. But I can think of 3 beginning with the letter S. Ruby, Ruby, Roo. What would that be? Scooby-Doo, yeah. Impressions as well. Another one beginning with the letter S. Don't! Simpsons, you can come again, yeah. Another one beginning with the letter S. Who lives in a pineapple under the sea? Thank you. Thank you for adding SquarePants on the end there, just in case I was going to confuse that SpongeBob with another one out there. I appreciate it's a terribly common name in Liverpool. All done with drawn animation, but there's one guy to thank for this. Many years ago, a filmmaker by the name of Walt Disney. When Walt was a young man, he made a short black and white film called Steamboat Willie. Don't giggle, it's not a rude word, steamboat. It features a mouse on a boat, whistling as he goes along. The mouse, of course, was Mickey, and off the back of that, he made movies that have inspired generations of filmmakers. That's drawn animation. Computer animation, everything is created inside of the computer. We don't use cameras, okay? Science, maths, and physics is what we need when we make computer animated movies. Most of my friends who work at these studios, like Pixar, they're as much physicists as they are animators and creatives. They bring those 2 things together, okay? They are a happy marriage. And you think about Pixar films, Toy Story, Finding Nemo, Ratatouille, Wall-E, Up, Incredibles, Brave. Those films, they win the Oscars, they win the BAFTAs. Everybody in animation wants to work there. I have friends who work at Pixar, but it's really hard to get a job at Pixar because Pixar, they only hire the best of the best. The best writers, the best artists, the best designers, the best computer programmers, that's the only place that they take them. They only take the best. If you're not good enough to work for Pixar, that's when you have to go and work on Shrek as punishment. Nobody wants that. The last sort of animation, the kind that's nearest and dearest and closest to my heart, is called puppet animation. Don't be misled by the word puppet. It's not a puppet on a string, okay? And it's not a glove puppet either. It's called model animation. Sometimes we call it stop frame or stop motion animation. Occasionally it's called claymation when your model's made out of plasticine. And you have a model of a character this big, stands on a set top without falling over. The animator takes a photo, a frame of animation. They step back in, they move the puppet tiny amounts, they step away and take a photo. They're back, they move, they step, they photo, they're back, they move, they step, they photo. You know this, okay? It's time-consuming, it's painstaking. This goes on and on over the course of the day until it feels like the animator's soul has departed his or her body. And at the end of the day, they're lucky if they've got 10 seconds of work done. Puppet animation, it's not a puppet on a string. High on a hill sits a lonely goat herd. It's not that, nor is it a glove puppet where you shove your fist up a frog's butt and work his mouth. It's not that. We all know it. We're thinking of Wallace and Gromit, okay? Preschool shows like Bob the Builder, Fireman Sam, and Postman Pat. Feature films such as Nightmare Before Christmas, Coraline, Paranorman, Kubo and the Two Strings. They're all done with puppets. I'm lucky. I get to work with all those different areas of animation, but it's puppets that I work with more than any other. And there is indeed one particular character I'd be best known for. It would be Bob the Builder. I am the designer of Bob the Builder. We are talking about the original Bob the Builder here, by the way, not the horror show that is currently on your TV sets. I'm very proud to say that's got now to do with me. However, the original Bob, I'm all over that like jam on a scone. I am the designer of Bob. Thank you. Beautiful. Enough. This is the first version of Bob that I had to do, okay? It's not a million miles away from the character that you guys grew up with, but I had to make changes. First of all, the feet, they're too small. He couldn't stand up without falling over. We gave him work boots. The hands, they're too small. He couldn't pick up his tools, so we gave him big, fat hands, okay? The tash, I thought I was being clever giving him a mo. The reason being is this, lip synchronization. Every time the character's mouth moves, you have to replace the mouth, okay? My job on Wallace and Gromit was making hundreds of Wallace's mouths. You don't need to do this, though, if your character has a big moustache that covers the mouth, because when he speaks, all you do is waggle a moustache. It was a cheat, a shortcut. I was being clever. Too clever for my own good, though, because the boss of the BBC pointed out preschool boys and girls are scared of facial hair. The BBC have done research into this. That's where your license fee has gone, sir. I don't know what that research involves, but I do have a rather unhealthy imagination. I like to imagine the chief exec of CBeebies, a lovely old lady, hiding in some bushes outside a preschool wearing a fake beard. When the kids walk past, she leaps out and shouts, "Boo!" which would scare me as well. Bob had a shaved moustache went. Last of all, I said we're going to get big laughs. Let's give him a nice big fat pair of sideburns, takes his helmet off, completely bald. They said, "Please give him hair." I said, "Trust me, it's really funny." They said, "Do you want to work on this show?" I gave him a wig. And that's how Bob came into being. I started work on Bob in 1997, finished work on Bob in 2007. Okay, he's made millions and billions of dollars the world over. It's not made in Hollywood, as many people seem to think. No. Manchester, just down the road. It's a Northwest character. He's a local boy. I am from Warrington. All the work I've done in film and TV and feature films and publishing has all been done from the Northwest. I didn't need to go over to Hollywood to do these things. Computers and the internet mean that we can stay in communication, we can stay in touch, and we can work remotely wherever we are as well. So, all the things that I've done, these chances, they're all born out of those hobbies that I had, okay? It's that magic word. Keep your hobbies. If I can do it, short, fat, and hairy from Warrington, you most certainly can as well. Other characters of mine that you probably know as well, Frankenstein's cat. When you were very little, the bigger kids would certainly remember that from the BBC. The other character I'm known for is on TV at the moment. If any of you have little brothers or sisters who watch CBeebies, in fact, who am I kidding? Half of you lot no doubt still watch CBeebies. You'll know him. His name is, of course, Rara the Noisy Lion. I am his dad. I'm the creator of Rara, I'm the designer of Rara, and I write a few of the episodes of Rara as well. There he is, see? He's not very big at all, is he? All hairy and smiley. Yeah, there's Rara as well. Very quickly, I'm going to show you how we draw the characters, okay? It's not difficult. They're simple shapes. I'm only going to show you Bob, actually. Very, very quickly, I'm just going to show you Bob. In the case of Bob the Builder, hopefully the camera up there can see, it's all simple shapes. It's a round head and an egg-shaped body. And all we do then is fill in the blanks, okay? We put a line across there. What would that line be on Bob the Builder? It would be his hat. Very good, okay? Rim of the hard hat, and there's the peak of the helmet. And all we do then is fill in the blanks. There's his eyes, his nose, his mouth, his ears, and his sideburns. There's his arms. He has that check plaid shirt, okay? There's his hands, so he doesn't drop his tools. There's his belt, so he doesn't drop his trousers. You don't want that in CBeebies. There's his feet, so he doesn't fall over. That's how we draw Bob. One thing you might not know about Bob, though, is this. When the moon is full, strange things happen. A transformation takes place. His clothes tear, and a thick, unsightly fur covers every inch of his short, fat, hairy body. Admittedly, so far, could just be a drawing of me. However, his hands become clawed, as do the toes on those short, fat, hairy hobbit feet. He gets a big fat monobrow, hair covers every inch of his head, Okay, his cheeks, his jowls, his chin, his lip, a fine, thick fur. The last thing to change, though, is his mouth, which transforms from a happy smile into a maw of razor-sharp teeth, a shining portcullis of deadly, perfect ivory. Because as we all know, Bob the Builder is, in fact, a member of the Bee Gees. He is, of course, a member of the Bee Gees, which means nothing to you, but your teachers will certainly understand. He is, of course, a werewolf. That smooth, seamless segue brings me towards a thing that I really want to talk about as well. Very quickly, I also write books for older audiences. I write fantasy, and I write horror for older audiences. Very briefly, I'm just going to close on this now, the Werewolf series as well.
When the air is clear, 16-year-old Drew Ferren can pick up the scent of a predator. When the moon breaks through the clouds, a terrifying fever grips him. His flesh tears, his fingers become claws, and Drew transforms. Can Drew battle the were-creatures determined to destroy him and master the animal within?
It's not Bob the Builder, is it? Weirworld is a series of fantasy novels. Obviously, for many years, I've had a great job in film and TV, but it wasn't my dream job. I always wanted to write novels for older audiences. I'm wrapping things up now, because I know we've filled a lot in this morning. You guys will all want comfort breaks and a cup of tea. But my love of writing is unsurprisingly born out of my love of reading. My love of reading started at my local public library when I was about 2 years old, and I remember it well. Whilst my mum was off in the romance section, digging out the latest Catherine Cookson, I was left rummaging around in the picture books, and I found one book that to this day has stayed with me as one of my favourites of all time. Where the Wild Things Are by Maurice Sendak. It was the first book I fell in love with, and I never looked back. By the time I was 9, I was back in the library choosing the first novel of my own volition, and that was The Hobbit by Tolkien, and that's where I fell in love with fantasy as a genre. By the time I got to high school, when I was your age, my friends and I would get together once, twice, 3 times a week to play Dungeons & Dragons, a role-playing game. My friends could not be bothered learning the rules. Therefore, it was after Muggins here to learn the rules. Therefore, I ran the games. But that's where I learned to tell a tale and spin a yarn, by playing these games and hobbies with my friends. And there's that word again. Hobby. I don't have any qualifications to write books, yet somehow in the last 8 years, I've had 11 novels published. I understand books because of my love of reading. I understand storytelling because of the games and hobbies I had when I was your age. For example, the Weirworld series, there are 6 books in this series. It's published internationally by Penguin Random House. Okay? When it was launched at San Diego Comic-Con, it was described as Game of Thrones for teenagers featuring werewolves. That's kind of stuck. In fact, last week, it has just been picked up to be developed into a live-action drama series, okay, by Line Pictures in Liverpool. Okay, we've not done any public press releases. You're the first audience to know this. But it's going to be filmed in the UK, and we're going to be following that. Netflix are front runners for picking this up as well. They're already debating with us how we can get it made. So I've gone full circle. I've gone from working in creative industries as an illustrator to a storyteller, in animation, and into publishing, and I'm now going back into broadcast as well. But this all comes from my ability to talk to people, to communicate, to make my own look in life as well. Undoubtedly, throughout my career, I've been in the right place at the right time, but by your actions, you can put yourself in the right place at the right time as well. Keep your hobbies, see where they'll take you. Collaborate, share your knowledge, don't tower build. Speak to others, share that information, who knows where it will take you as well. Thank you for being a lovely audience.